The war had boundaries. That was what made it respectable. The Zereth Dominion and the Korlothi Syndicate had been fighting for 8 standard cycles, yet the conflict remained carefully measured. Fleets clashed in designated sectors. Hyperspace corridors were contested but not collapsed. Civilian infrastructure was, in theory, exempt. Losses were calculated, acceptable, manageable. In the Zereth High Command War Chamber, enormous tactical projections hovered in midair, glowing constellations of fleet positions and supply lines. Admirals discussed casualty percentages with the same tone used for logistics forecasts. Projected attrition remains within strategic tolerance, one analyst reported. Territorial exchange stabilizing along Corridor Theta, another added. At the center of it all stood General Varric Tesh. Calm, precise, unimpressed. "This war will exhaust them before it exhausts us," he said evenly. "Maintain pressure." Across the galaxy, the war was already being described in academic terms. Limited engagement doctrine. Controlled escalation model. A textbook example of interstellar containment. No one intended annihilation. No one sought extinction. It was competition. Violent, yes, but structured. Then the doors to the war chamber opened. A junior communications officer entered, moving too quickly for protocol. General Tesh did not look up immediately. "Report." The officer hesitated, then spoke. "General, we have confirmation of a strike on the Sol Fringe mining sector." A few officers glanced at one another. "That system lies within contested boundaries," Tesh replied. "Expected." "Yes, sir." But the orbital mining platform was registered under independent contract. And it was a human colony. The room quieted slightly. Not alarmed. Just attentive. Humanity had entered galactic politics recently. A mid-tier power. Industrious. Adaptable. Not yet fully aligned with either side. Was the strike intentional? Tesh asked. Unclear. Korlothi fleet signatures were detected in the area during engagement. Casualties. The officer swallowed. 73 confirmed, including 21 juveniles. A faint shift passed through the chamber. Not horror. Assessment. Collateral damage, one admiral muttered. Within statistical projection, another added. The general finally turned toward the tactical display. The Sol system flickered faintly at the edge of the projection. Humans were advised to avoid contested sectors, Tesh said calmly. Issue formal regret. Attribute the loss to crossfire. Yes, sir. And ensure the wording emphasizes non-deliberate targeting. The officer nodded but did not move. There is more. Human diplomatic channels have requested immediate clarification. Their tone is direct. Tesh allowed himself the smallest exhale. Humans are emotionally responsive. This is predictable. He clasped his hands behind his back. Transmit apology. Offer compensation credit. Understood. The chamber resumed its low hum of strategy discussion. Fleet projections shifted. Supply routes recalculated. On the far edge of the display, Sol space pulsed once. Then went quiet. No retaliation fleets mobilized. No emergency council demands. Just silence. Tesh glanced briefly at the empty communications panel. "See," he said to no one in particular. Contained. But far beyond Zereth sensor range, shipyards in Sol space activated dormant construction lines. Encrypted signals passed between human military nodes. Civilian transports reversed course toward core systems. No speeches were made. No threats issued. Just quiet reallocation of resources. Back in the Zereth war chamber, General Tesh dismissed the report from his mind. The war remained structured, predictable, manageable. He did not yet understand that in a conflict built on, the apology was transmitted within 3 hours. It was formally structured, diplomatically precise, and carefully worded to avoid admission of deliberate targeting. Compensation credits were offered. Regret was expressed. Responsibility was diffused. Under standard galactic protocol, that should have been the end of it. Instead, Sol went quiet. At first, the change was subtle. Human trade vessels scheduled through Zereth-controlled corridors cancelled docking windows. Cargo convoys rerouted without explanation. Joint research exchanges were postponed, pending review. Minor disruptions. Nothing alarming. In the Zereth High Command Chamber, analysts flagged the changes with mild curiosity. Human commercial activity in border sectors has decreased by 30%. Likely risk aversion, an admiral commented. They lack conflict tolerance. General Veric Tesh nodded once. Expected behavior. Continue monitoring. But within Sol space, something far more deliberate was unfolding. Human ambassadors withdrew from 3 galactic assemblies without public statement. Military data traffic spiked across encrypted channels. Civilian media within Sol ceased broadcasting casualty debates. There were no angry speeches, no visible mobilization, no fleet parades meant to intimidate. Just silence. A Corlothi reconnaissance probe attempting to scan outer Sol patrol routes returned incomplete telemetry. Multiple fleet signatures previously assigned to defensive patrol sectors are unaccounted for, a Zereth intelligence officer reported. Destroyed? Someone asked. No debris fields detected. Relocated. Unknown. General Tesh studied the projection. Human fleet markers that had once orbited key trade lanes were gone. Not destroyed. Not engaged. Gone. Humans do not possess stealth capabilities on that scale, one strategist argued. No, the intelligence officer replied carefully. But they possess mobility. Within 48 hours, long-range scanners detected heavy traffic in Sol's inner shipyards. Docking rings once reserved for maintenance were now operating continuously. Asteroid mining operations shifted output from commercial materials to refined alloy. Orbital platforms reconfigured their external arrays. The most concerning change was not what moved, but what stopped. Human-civilian news networks halted public casualty debates. No protest movements emerged. No mass outcry against war. Instead, civilian broadcasts carried a single consistent message. Support infrastructure redirection. Across Sol, school schedules were adjusted. Manufacturing plants extended shifts. And human leadership did not address the galaxy. In the Zereth war chamber, unease began to creep in. They are not issuing threats, an analyst observed. They are not demanding reparations. They are not seeking council arbitration. General Tesh folded his hands behind his back. Humans are volatile, he said evenly. They require time to process emotional stimuli. But, sir, the intelligence officer pressed, their fleet dispersal patterns do not indicate emotional instability. Clarify. They are not massing for retaliation. A pause. They are repositioning for structural engagement. The chamber grew still. On the tactical display, Sol space no longer resembled a passive trade hub. Supply routes were tightening. Civilian vessels were clustering inward. Military signatures were spreading outward along vectors that did not align with either Zereth or Korlothi advance routes. "They are anticipating expansion paths," someone whispered. General Tesh stared at the shifting projections. "Humans are not a primary combatant," he said firmly. "No," the intelligence officer agreed. "But they are preparing as if they intend to become one." The apology had been sent. The war, by all official measures, remained contained. Yet across the edge of known space, humanity had stopped speaking and begun calculating. The Korlothi advance into Corridor Theta was supposed to be routine. A limited push. A controlled engagement. A predictable exchange of firepower with Zereth defense fleets. War, as it had been for 8 cycles. 3 Korlothi battlegroups exited fold space in tight formation, their command vessel broadcasting standard territorial claim protocols. Their objective was simple: pressure Zereth supply lines and force a strategic concession. Instead, human ships were waiting. They did not arrive dramatically. They did not flood the sky. They were simply there. 12 vessels positioned in silent formation beyond the hyperspace exit vector. Sleek, angular hulls. Minimal insignia. No grand banners or ceremonial escorts. The Korlothi commander frowned at the tactical display. "Identify fleet origin. Human registry confirmed." A pause. "Why are they here?" Before an answer could be formed, space bent again. 2 more human squadrons exited fold space behind the Korlothi formation. Precise. Measured. Intentional. The Korlothi fleet was now bracketed. "This sector is not under human jurisdiction," the commander transmitted. "Withdraw immediately." No response. Instead, the first strike landed. Not on the flagship. Not on weapons arrays. On engines. Kinetic penetrators targeted propulsion cores with surgical accuracy. Shield frequencies were matched and countered within seconds. Communication relays were jammed with layered interference algorithms. In under 90 seconds, half the Korlothi fleet lost maneuverability. "No planetary bombardment detected," a Zereth observer later reported. "No civilian strikes." Human firepower did not scatter wildly. It isolated. Weapons systems disabled. Targeting matrices corrupted. Escape vectors sealed. The Korlothi commander attempted a counter-barrage. Human ships dispersed with impossible coordination, predictive movement patterns anticipating firing solutions before they fully formed. "They are not retaliating emotionally," the commander transmitted desperately. "This is pre-planned." In the Zereth war chamber, General Veric Tesh watched the feed in silence. "Projected human losses?" he asked. "Minimal." "Projected Korlothi?" 72% fleet immobility within first engagement window. The display shifted again. Additional human vessels emerged along outer hyperspace lanes, not to attack, but to block reinforcements. Supply corridors were severed. Long-range communication buoys were disabled without destruction. It was not a battle. It was a restructuring. "They are isolating escalation vectors," an analyst whispered. General Tesh's jaw tightened. "Why?" No one answered immediately. Then the intelligence officer spoke. Sol fringe colony destruction occurred along this same corridor. Silence settled heavily over the chamber. On screen, the remaining Korlothi ships powered down weapon systems one by one. Human vessels did not pursue retreating escape pods, did not demand surrender speeches, did not broadcast threats. They simply held position until every hostile system was neutralized. Then, as calmly as they had appeared, they repositioned, not toward Zereth space, not toward territorial gain, but along every major hyperspace artery feeding into active war zones. "They're not choosing sides," an admiral murmured. "No," the intelligence officer corrected quietly. "They're choosing terms." General Tesh felt something unfamiliar stir beneath his composure. The war had been manageable because it followed patterns: expansion, retaliation, negotiation. But humanity had not escalated. They had intervened, calculated, deliberate, and precise. The Korlothi fleet had not been destroyed. It had been rendered irrelevant. A message without theatrics, without fury, without chaos. And as new human fleet signatures began appearing across multiple contested sectors, the realization formed slowly, heavily, undeniably. Humanity was not reacting. They were executing a doctrine. And this was only the beginning. The hyperspace gate at Orath Prime was the artery of the war. Whoever controlled it controlled supply flow to 3 contested sectors. It had changed hands twice already during the conflict, each exchange costly but measured. Predictable. General Veric Tesh ordered a decisive operation. Secure the gate. Establish fortified perimeter. We end this phase cleanly. Zereth battle groups translated into real space in tight, disciplined formation. Carrier platforms deployed fighter screens. Artillery cruisers locked targeting solutions along expected Korlothi vectors. Everything unfolded according to model, until the sky shifted. Multiple fold space ruptures detected, an operations officer reported. Source. Tesh demanded. The officer hesitated. Sole origin signatures. The first wave of human ships emerged in perfect alignment above the hyperspace gate. Not scattered. Not rushed. Placed. More ruptures opened. And more. The tactical display began to crowd. Dozens. Hundreds. Then thousands. They did not form a chaotic wall of steel. They formed layers. Outer interdiction ring. Mid-range suppression grid. Inner precision strike cluster. A design. A system. "This exceeds prior engagement scale," an analyst whispered. General Tesh stared at the swelling projections. "This is full mobilization." "No, sir," the intelligence officer corrected quietly. "Confirmed Sol fleet reserves indicate this is 38% capacity." Silence consumed the chamber. At Orath Prime, the human fleet moved. Not with rage. With synchronization. Zereth forward cruisers attempted to reposition. Their engines died. Not destroyed. Disabled. Electronic warfare units flooded targeting networks with cascading logic faults. Drone swarms severed sensor arrays without breaching life support. Every movement the Zereth attempted, anticipated, countered, neutralized. "Human vessels are avoiding reactor core strikes," an officer reported. "They are preserving hull integrity." "For capture?" someone asked. "For irrelevance," the intelligence officer replied. Within 12 minutes, the Zereth fleet lost control of the hyperspace gate. Within 20, supply lines feeding 3 sectors were severed. No planets burned. No cities were glassed. But war production capacity across half the conflict zone dropped by 63% in a single hour. At the center of the formation, a massive human command carrier held position, silent, immovable. A message transmitted across all military channels. Clear, unemotional. Further escalation will result in complete strategic paralysis. No threats of extinction. No declarations of vengeance. Just consequence. A Korlothi reinforcement fleet attempted to break through from the far vector. They never reached engagement distance. Human interceptors cut propulsion systems before the first shot was fired. Across the galaxy, military projections recalculated in real time. The war was no longer Zereth versus Korlothi. It was both. Under constraint. They are not expanding territory, an admiral murmured in disbelief. They are compressing it, Tesh replied slowly. He felt the weight of understanding settle in. The Sol Fringe colony had been categorized as collateral, a statistic, a regrettable footnote. Humanity had not responded with fury. They had responded with architecture. They had mapped every escalation pathway, identified every vulnerability. And now, they were dismantling the war without firing a single planet-killing weapon. At Orath Prime, the human fleet completed its encirclement of the hyperspace gate. Then they stopped, holding position, watching, waiting. General Varric Tesh stood motionless before the tactical display. The war had been manageable because both sides agreed to limits. Humanity had not broken those limits. They had redefined them, and for the first time since the conflict began, the Zereth general understood something far more dangerous than rage. Human patience, and its expiration. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called within hours of Orath Prime. Representatives from a dozen major powers filled the chamber, their holographic projections flickering in uneasy silence. The Zereth and Korlothi delegations stood opposite one another, not as dominant rivals, but as parties suddenly aware of shared vulnerability. At the center dais, a final projection materialized. Human. Ambassador Elias Warren stood calmly, hands folded behind his back. No visible guards. No warship fleet displayed in the background. Just a neutral chamber inside Sol space. Let the record show, Warren began evenly, that humanity did not initiate this war. His tone was not angry. It was measured. You entered contested sectors, a Korlothi representative argued. You disrupted sovereign military operations. We intervened, Warren corrected, after a civilian colony under our protection was destroyed. A Zereth counselor stiffened. That strike was not intentional. We are aware, Warren replied. Intent was not the determining variable. The chamber shifted uneasily. 73 civilians were killed, Warren continued. 21 were children. You classified it as collateral. No raised voice. No accusation. Just fact. We classify it as unacceptable. A pause followed. You have crippled half the war zone, a Zereth admiral said tightly, without formal declaration. We have not crippled it, Warren corrected again. We have constrained it. A new projection filled the chamber, a strategic overlay of hyperspace corridors, fleet positions, and supply chains. Human interdiction zones glowed across every major escalation vector. Humanity has enacted the civilian protection doctrine, Warren said. Effective immediately. A line of text appeared beneath the projection. Any military force operating within range of human civilian infrastructure will be subject to strategic neutralization. Murmurs rippled across the chamber. "You presume authority beyond your jurisdiction," a Korlothi envoy protested. "We presume responsibility within our range," Warren replied. The Zereth delegation exchanged glances. "You have not destroyed our fleets," General Verik Tesh said at last, stepping forward into frame. "You have disabled them." "Yes." "You have not occupied territory." "No." "Then what is your objective?" Warren met his gaze directly. "To make this war unprofitable." Silence fell heavier than before. "You calculated losses as acceptable," Warren continued. "We recalculated them as systemic." Another projection replaced the first: industrial production graphs, resource depletion curves, economic collapse forecasts. "If hostilities continue," Warren said calmly, "your capacity to sustain them will degrade beyond recovery within 4 cycles." The implication was clear. Humanity had not chosen annihilation. They had chosen inevitability. "You could have burned our core worlds," a Korlothi commander said quietly. "Yes," Warren agreed. "Why did you not?" The ambassador's expression did not change. "Because this is not about vengeance." The chamber held its breath. "It is about precedent." The words echoed through the vast hall. "Civilian infrastructure is not collateral," Warren said. "It is boundary." Another line of text appeared beneath the doctrine. "Violation results in permanent strategic limitation." General Tesh felt the weight of his earlier dismissal, statistically insignificant, echo in his mind. Humanity had not responded emotionally. They had responded structurally. They had rewritten the cost of war. "We will withdraw interdiction fleets once both parties formally cease offensive expansion," Warren concluded. "Compliance verification will follow. No threats. No ultimatums. Just consequence." The projection faded. The chamber remained silent. The war had once been manageable, predictable, contained. But humanity had entered it not as conquerors, and not as victims. They had entered it as architects, and in doing so, they had introduced something far more dangerous than fury. Standards. The Zereth and Korlothi would continue to exist. Their fleets would rebuild. Their territories would stabilize. But the calculus of war had changed, because now every strategist across the galaxy understood a single, irreversible truth. Humanity did not escalate. They corrected. And once corrected, they did not allow the mistake twice.